One thing is, all right, let's do it. Well, welcome everyone to another Cosmic Monthly Symposium. It's really great to have you. My name's Philip Edgecombe, resident physician at the University of British Columbia and one of the co-founders of Cosmic and now board members. Our mission is one that I continue to be inspired by, which is that at Cosmic, our goal is to create abundant access to medical equipment through open source design solutions. And we've been at it for over a year now, having started at the height of the first wave of the COVID pandemic, originally based in Vancouver, and now reaching out to include collaborators from around Canada and even around the world. Our monthly Cosmic Symposium is an opportunity for us to connect with other change makers and people that are very much involved in the open source design solution space, as well as a chance for us to hear from our various teams about the progress that they're making and to get feedback from our donors, our volunteers, and our community members about how we can continue to have a positive impact. So welcome and thank you for making some time to be here with us today. I'm very pleased to be able to share that we have Yajur from Open Source Medical Supplies British Columbia, who will be joining us today, and he will be our keynote speaker. And he is the executive director at the Open Source Medical Solutions for British Columbia. And he'll share a little bit about their mission and vision, and hopefully we'll have a chance to learn how we can potentially collaborate with them. And as usual, we're going to hear from, we've got the bubble helmet, the oxygen concentrator, and the algae rebreather team, who will all be giving us updates. But before jumping over to hear from Yajur, I'd like to just share with everyone what is really exciting, which is our first ever annual report. I'm going to share my screen just so that I can show it off. And as people trickle in, once we've had a chance to look at the annual report, we'll get our customary group picture and check in with everyone. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. And before going any further, I should remind everyone that we are recording and we are streaming to Facebook. But we will have an opportunity at the end of this session to have a bit more of an informal meet and greet where we stop recording and just have a chance to catch up with each other. So this is the annual report. I trust that you can see my screen. I'm looking for thumbs up from, looks like Peter here. Yeah. So this was primarily put together by our executive director, Patrick Wilkie. And as you can see, it's quite a kind of beautiful presentation of some of the work that we've done. We'll be putting it out on our website very shortly, but I'll just flip through it just to draw your attention to a few different pieces. So we have a letter from our executive director, Patrick Wilkie, highlighting a page kind of highlighting what our mission is, and the founders, and then kind of a recap of some of the major successes that we've had over the past year, which, as some of you will remember, our kind of first ever project was building a bag valve mask ventilator, which we were successful in doing, and we did so by recreating the design that was already available, called the Apollo BVM design, and that was to be able to provide mechanical bag valve mask ventilation. We have the G-Vent project, which was notable in that it was a novel approach for pressure-driven ventilatory support for patients. And it did go on to win the Roche Canada's Canada COVID-19 Open Innovation Challenge. The bubble helmet, which continues on and we'll hear about today. The snorkel mask, and I was just saying at the beginning when Yair joined that we had a really great quote describing, kind of highlighting effectively what we were able to achieve with the snorkel mask from Yair here. And Yara, since you're on the call, I don't know if you'd be kind enough to read out the quote so that we can hear from the author himself, and maybe just give us a brief context about how this came about.
Sure. With these shipments to Brazil, we have validated our own design and had it used in 2 hospitals to treat COVID-19 patients in the hottest hotspot in the world, and also fulfilled Cosmic's vision of open source hardware that can be shared and manufactured locally around the world. So so this is Dr. Negri, David Negri, in a hospital, and they took our design and used it, as you can see, here and in another hospital, also in Rio, and they also took our design and modified it a little bit to suit their needs a little better, and manufactured it so exactly what we envisioned should happen happened. So I'm happy about it very much.
I think we all are, and thank you, Yara. You are certainly had an instrumental role in setting up that collaboration, and that was I guess back in more November, December, when Brazil really was the hotspot in the world.
My pleasure.
So carrying on, we highlight the clinical respiratory support. We review some of our operations, which we did receive $46,000 in donations, and we do have a surplus of $19,000 going forward into the next fiscal year. And those funds are primarily being used to continue to support both the ongoing projects that we have and future ones that we will spin up. And this is a partial list. Unfortunately, I'm sure we missed some people of the many contributors and recognition of our donors. So really pleased to be able to share our annual report, and keep an eye out on the website so that you can download it and read it in full. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing screen, and it looks like we've got a few more people here, so this will be an opportunity for us to check in. If you guys would be so kind as to turn on your videos, we'll do a little breathing exercise tomorrow together, and then we'll get a group picture as well. So just to kind of ground ourselves and be present, if you can just follow me, we'll do one round of deep breathing. And just try to focus on being at the meeting and leave those concerns behind. So breathing in, hold, and out, and then just hold. And now you can breathe normally again. Great. Okay, I'm going to get a group picture. So if you can wave and say hello. Excellent. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to ask Yajur from OSMS BC to give us a presentation about the work that they're doing.
Hello, everyone. Mic test 1, 2. Can everybody hear me? Do this if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to share my screen. So let me know if you can see it. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Yep. Looks like we are live. Okay. So thanks again, everyone, for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to interact and work with all of you awesome people at Cosmic and all of the awesome people watching this live stream as part of the audience. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to listen to what I got to say today. So to start off with, many of you may be wondering, what is open source medical supplies in British Columbia? Well, let me tell you what we do first, and then let me tell you why we do it, and then you'll be able to figure that out. So to start off with, Open Source Medical Supplies BC is a not-for-profit collective of dedicated people, engineers, manufacturers, and many more kind of people from all walks of life who came together to solve many of the problems that are happening because of COVID and COVID-related issues. And after a couple of months focusing on COVID, we recognized that, hey, you know, many of the problems we're trying to solve today are going to happen during the next pandemic. And there's also other silent pandemics and silent health issues happening on right now, even in the middle of the pandemic, that people may not be talking about, whether it's inequalities around access to health, inequalities regarding like the ability to age in a self-empowering way and self-liberating way. Two other silent pandemics that some people have already been very aware of, such as the opioid crisis, which by some accounts was even more deadly than the COVID-19 pandemic in certain parts of BC. And we believe that we can take many of the lessons that we've learned forward and many of the tool sets that we've been able to develop together and solve those kind of problems. And so our promise is to do our best to help people get their products, ideas, services, whatever they're thinking of, whatever difference they want to make, and help them make a global difference, even a local difference. And so in the past and currently, we've been able to help a wide array of people, including you guys, which we were so happy to, keep the lights on and make sure that we could do whatever we can to like spread the word about what y'all are doing. We were able to help mask makers like Sue, like with Claire, the BC Apparel Association, Mask for Work, and many more people who are part of the decentralized maker community, including like a very big shout out to BCC3D and the work they were doing with coordinating so many different people and getting some amazing stuff out there. So shout out to Petco. He's an awesome guy. Check him out. And also looking into more ways that we could support the research and response side of things. So we've been able to talk to and work with universities such as SFU, University of Northern BC, and others. Currently, we're continuing to develop and build out other designs such as the negative pressure room, which we've been able to incubate, that was contributed to us from a BC-based doctor based in Abbotsford. We've also continued to do our work with supporting supply distribution with a variety of different manufacturers and donors, including Project Northern Lights, who are awesome people. Please check them out. As well as basically figuring out ways we can support other rollouts across not only Canada, but the world, in terms of some of the activities we're doing to get large-scale clinical ventilators to places where they're needed most, with folks we met through End Coronavirus, who are also great people. And so we'd like to give a very big, hearty thank you to everyone who's been supporting us on our journey, whether they've been donors, people we've worked with, and people we've had the opportunity to interact with. And so, as they say, teamwork makes the dream work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Yajur. Just while people are thinking about questions, because I think we'll have time for one or two questions, can you just tell us what the relationship is between OSMS BC and OSMS, the kind of global organization, and
yeah, so
how you guys work together?
Okay, so at the start of the pandemic, OSMS Central / Mothership, which is another term people tend to use for it, was an organization very specifically focused on aggregating designs and spreading the word out about them. So for example, they would help understand, okay, these are the types of things that people are running out of. So let's say a local team out of Vancouver, like VMers, for example, was saying, okay, people are saying we need intubation boxes, or we need to help increase the amount of protection available to someone working at a front desk. How do we do that? And so through Mothership, OSMS and OSMS BC was able to work together and say, okay, these are the types of things people have. And so they would host the designs on their board. You can go to their design boards and see them. Furthermore, they'd act as like kind of a hub and aggregator. So different teams and different networks to get connected in, share information, share knowledge, share people, and work on from there. And so we like to describe ourselves as a mini-me, but the network is more than the sum of its parts, and they are the amplifier. So thank you. If you would like to support the work we and OSMS BC and OSMS Mothership and all the other groups and networks we're working with, please do let us know. We'd love to have and reset our liaison relationship with Cosmic and continue to really boost and amplify the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Yajur. It looks like we have one more question from Abhijit.
Yeah, so currently we recently had a...
And if I may, just for the benefit of the people that are watching the recording or the live stream, Abhijit, could you ask the question just so that, because some people might not have access to the chat.
Absolutely. I was just wondering, Yajur, I would love to know what are some of the current projects or innovative products that OSMS BC is currently working on?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you more about them. So recently, about 2 weeks ago, we had a innovation summit and competition called OSMS Spark, which was designed to give a venue and space for individual designers, design teams, and other groups to pitch their ideas, inventions, or projects they wanted support for. So through that, we were able to get in touch with people who were making 3D and injection molded simple ventilators powered by air. People who are creating new and better designs for masks and spacers for masks to increase the utility and usability of them for surgical grade equipment or for making it other parts of it easier to deal with. Then we also got proposals and asked to support development on COVID diagnostic tools and COVID prevention tools, including sensor systems designed to alert people when there's too many people in a room. So a whole variety of different projects and things are going on in the background, plus our relationships and our distribution and supply efforts. We'd love to tell you more. Please join us at our next town hall happening next Monday at 5 p.m. PST.
Thank you, Yajur. And if you could just post in the chat a link to that invitation, that would be great. So
most definitely.
If you could stop sharing your screen, that would be great. And we're going to move on to our updates from our various teams. Before we do, I just wanted to call out that I'm very grateful that I think we're all grateful to have Alex here, one of the co-founders of Cosmic, and who's kindly done the IT side today. Really pleased to see, obviously, Dr. Peter Dodek, an intensive care physician who has a lot of expertise and research, both within, working at St. Paul's as an intensivist as well as around the world. Yer Lin, professor at UBC. And then we're also grateful to have Glenn and Fayaz and David and Arpan and Katya and Kene all join us. So it's lovely to see everyone. So let's hear from Abhijit and let's turn our attention over to Abhijit for an update about the oxygen concentrator.
Yeah. Can you hear me? You can see the screen as well.
Yeah.
Right. So as you know, oxygen issue is quite significant. So our work started last year when there was sort of first wave of the of COVID, and there was already issue with oxygen supply. So based on that motivation, we started looking at various different ways. What are the issues with the current design and why there is a large demand for oxygen. Of course, it's because of COVID. We found out that the oxygen demand is quite significant even pre-COVID. So we came up with a design. Some of the key features of the designs were moisture and humidity control. We are able to regenerate the desiccant that's incorporated in the design. It's low cost and easy to assemble, and we have flexibility for the compressed air source. So I've been working on it for the last 7 or 8 months and trying various different aspects of design, changing the material, changing the component sizes and so forth. And just last week, we had our first breakthrough. So we were able to achieve significant oxygen concentration, still not 82% that is determined by WHO. However, we were able to run with a consistent output that is half the quantity of zeolite that's traditionally used. So it's just a matter of scaling up to achieve that concentration. One of the interesting points is that about 60% idle time was there for the compressors. That indicates that significantly less power consumption. Would be able to give more detailed numbers as we do some more testing and so forth. But these are some encouraging results. Next steps would be scale up and optimize. As I mentioned before, we just use half the quantity of light. Optimize the parameter, we'll play with the components, play with the material, play with the process parameters. Secondly, control system. Currently, we are using manual change of cycles. It's easier going forward, especially we want to do number 3, which is endurance testing to imitate conditions in hot and humid places like India. One of the big issue currently in India is concentrators not able to function properly. And the reason is that it's hot and humid, more hot and more humid than they have been tested before. So there is a large equipment graveyard where concentrators just do not work. We will imitate the exact same conditions here and test it, and we'll publish the data. So that's all from oxygen concentrator side, and this is our team.
Thank you, Abhijit. Really great to hear. From what I understand, the testing was the result of, as Bruce Woodburn, one of the other co-leads of the oxygen concentrator team, described it, a marathon testing session just last weekend. And so congratulations to have a prototype up and running and to be at the point where it's time to iterate on the design and see how we could continue to improve on things. So we'll stay tuned. I think it's worth mentioning to the Cosmic community that finding an appropriate space is still a bit of an issue for the oxygen concentrator team. Is that right?
That's right. So we are looking at the place where we are at currently doesn't allow to make so much sound, even though we use less than 70 decibel compressor. It's an art studio, so it's better to find a nice place at least for a month where we can just let it run.
Right. So ideally, we have a workshop space that we're renting right now, which is for creative artists. And so they're not too keen on the compressor running for 24 hours a day for a longer test. So if there's if anyone knows of a good lab space, which could be made open to the group, that would be a big help. Thanks, Abhijit. Let's turn our attention now to a related project, which is the Algae Rebreather project, also addressing what is an oxygen shortage around the world when it comes to medical treatment. And I think we're going to hear from Kene and or Katia for that update. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. So I'll just share my screen. Yes, so the Algae Rebreather, it's basically the goal behind this to sort of recycle air back to patients. So we breathe out a certain amount of oxygen, and we also breathe out carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide would be converted to oxygen using the algae, and then all the oxygen in total would then be recycled back to people. So I think the idea is that the Algae Rebreather should work in conjunction with the oxygen concentrator, but it could also work on its own if the yield is high enough. Yeah. So from the sort of in the last symposium, I talked about how we wanted to start culturing algae, and yeah, we have, but the results are not as promising as we would have hoped. So we're taking biomass measurements, and I'm doing all this at home. So I'm drying algae in the oven and then weighing it to see what the biomass is. So we're using basically a dry weight. But as you can see with this graph, it's not what you would expect for microorganisms. We were expecting, a lag phase, and then an exponential phase going straight up, and then a stationary phase, and then death phase. But this is all over the place. In fact, we have negative readings, which, and that just tells you all you need to know. So currently working on how to sort of get these readings to be accurate. And I think some of the reasons why they are not accurate is because the sample size may be too small. So right now, the culture itself is not big. As a result, the sample sizes have to be small. So if you have like 2 milliliters of a dilute culture, yeah, the results won't be as reliable as you would expect. So we're looking to sort of validate the characterization method we're using currently, which is the dry weight. So we want to look into optical densities. So I'm working with a graduate student actually at UBC who has been kind enough to sort of help with this optical readings using an optical density reader. So it's all automatic, and whatever the results are from that, I take it as truth. So we're looking to do that and then see what the actual biomass is of the culture. So yeah, we've talked about how the culture is too dilute for measurements right now, but there's actually a bit of an issue in terms of this, because the pH right now of the culture is also is higher than expected. So right now it's at pH 9, but we wanted it, like the ideal pH is at pH 7. So to reduce the pH, one way really is to add more media. But if you add more media, you make the culture more dilute. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think the pH may be a more important factor to focus on right now, because the conditions need to be optimal so that the culture can get denser. So yeah, this is something we're working on right now. We hope things get better once we scale up, and once we've done the optical density readings, then we can have a better idea of the truth of the matter, I guess. Another thing we've been looking into is simulating the whole algae rebreather using Aspen Plus. So Aspen Plus allows me to, basically replicate our process theoretically. You have your air, you have water vapor, and then this is all being mixed, and then it's going to a reactor that will contain algae, and basically this algae would then convert it to carbon dioxide. And right now it's a flash column here, but this is only just really to separate the oxygen from the rest.
The algae would convert it to air, oxygen, right? Isn't that the intent?
Oh, sorry, did I say something wrong? So carbon dioxide to oxygen. Yeah, thank you, Philip. And then, yeah, we would have the oxygen, and then this oxygen, we can then split it. So because maybe patients only need a certain amount of oxygen, so we can send that to the patient and then send the rest to the algae, or back to be mixed again, and then sent through the reactor. So basically it's all a closed loop. Some of the culture would need to be purged because we're trying to maintain a certain density of the culture. Current calculations say that density is about 20 grams per liter, but the calculations are still something we are working on because I guess there are more up-to-date papers and research out there that we're trying to get or take advantage of. So yes, the whole idea behind the Aspen Plus simulation is to theoretically conduct experiments or find optimal solutions. And what's really nice about the program is that it provides information about the yields, about costs, and basically replicates this whole chemical environment. So, it talks about, I don't know, enthalpies and enthalpies of formation and everything. So it takes all that into account. Current calculations suggest a 300-liter culture would be required to provide like one person with the required amount of oxygen they need. But this is still a work in progress because we're trying to replicate NASA's system. And NASA, like from what we've seen, they seem to be using a more like a desktop-sized or like a tabletop-sized algae rebreather. So hopefully this value reduces over time as we get more information and process that. Yeah. So that's where we are right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that update, and it really is a novel approach to regenerating oxygen, or I guess taking inspiration from nature in terms of the cycle of life and the cycle of oxygen. So keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to hearing how things are next week. I'm aware of the time, so I'm just going to move on to our bubble helmet group. I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully Arpan, who's the co-lead for the bubble helmet group, could just give us a 1-minute update so that we can finish close to on time. Okay, Arpan?
Yeah, that sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll be nice and short. So giving a quick overview of the helmet, it has TPU. It's made of TPU, creates a hermetic seal around the patient's head, has an inflow and outflow port for providing patients with subcritical or mild hypoxemia. And some benefits, as you can see on the screen here, it increases the ventilator supply, improves patient outcomes, reduces healthcare costs, and prevents future hospital outbreaks. I'll move on to the updates just to be cognizant of the time now. So that's a quick 2-minute overview. So some of the things that we're working on currently, we're at a quite different stage in the project compared to the OxCon and the Algae rebreather. So we're working on creating packaging materials such as the labels, instructions for use. Also created an instructional video recently. We're also continually applying for funding and grants just to get to the next stage of the development. And we have recently been in talks with Make Plus Studio, who's a lab out of BCIT, who is ISO 13485 certified, and they will be potentially be helping us update our documentation so it meets the ISO 13485 standards. Some of their, I'd say, big updates is we have recently created a spin-off company from Cosmic, who is solely focusing on approval and get. We recently applied for the Health Canada interim order and the FDA emergency use authorization through this new party. That's pretty exciting. We're waiting to hear back on that in about 10 days. So yeah, that's nice and short, quick update. Free to take any questions afterwards. Message me on LinkedIn or email. Thanks.
Thank you, Arpan, for that update. Exciting to hear that you have an FDA and Health Canada approval pending. So we'll stay tuned for that. I think we have time for one question for any of the projects, and then we'll end our live stream and have a bit more of an informal meet and greet. Alex, do you have a question?
I'm trying to think.
Okay. I think one question that comes to mind for me is as it relates to the 60% production capacity of oxygen for the oxygen concentrator. Is that a kind of clinically relevant concentration? Would we be satisfied with that, or is it only useful once we get to 82% concentration?
That's more like a Bruce question at this point, coming from an engineering background, but WHO standard specifies 82%. But definitely some of the concentrators that are being currently used in India go as low as 30 to 40% as well. So desperate situation, desperate measures, this would still be useful than having nothing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense from a physiological perspective, because I think the normal concentration of oxygen just in the atmosphere, if I'm not wrong, is around 20%. And so if we can give triple the concentration, that's still a step in the right direction.
And scaling up isn't a large issue at this point where we're at. So that shouldn't take much time to go up.
Great. I'm just seeing one other question about the current status of GVent. I think that's a question best answered by Patrick. That's a question coming from Glenn. But as I understand it, we're kind of documentation is available, open source. We've open sourced the design as best as we can, but we're not actively pursuing further testing or commercialization, partly in recognition of the changing landscape and the rush that there was to create ventilators. And I think the world has addressed, maybe not perfectly, but has largely addressed the ventilator shortage and I guess the move in the medical community has been away from putting patients directly on ventilators as soon as they start to have some respiratory compromise. So we kind of felt it was better to focus our resource, time, and energy on some of the upstream issues, which is, can we get enough oxygen? Can we keep patients off of requiring a ventilator with the oxygen concentrator? And so that's the status update there. All right, that's a wrap. Another great meeting. We'll be reconvening for the same thing in July 15th, I believe. So you could put that in your calendars at 5:30 p.m. And we're very fortunate to have one of the co-founders of RLoop who will be joining us. And RLoop was a open source distributed design team that developed the Hyperloop, a pod for the Hyperloop competition that Elon Musk and SpaceX or SpaceX et al. Hosted back in 2017. So he'll be sharing the lessons that they learned about how they were able to design that very complex electromechanical system, drawing on engineers from all over the world. And he is also based out of Canada, so that's also going to be interesting to hear the Canadian perspective on things. So thank you very much. It's always great to see everyone, and I think we'll stop the recording now. Stop the Facebook.